Good morning, my dear friends. Today's topic is on hemostasis. For that, you should know now what is normal hemostasis. Hemo is nothing but blood. Stasis is a flow. Normal hemostasis is a result of a set of well-regulated processes that accomplish two important functions. First function is to maintain the blood in a fluid, clot-free state in normal blood vessels. And second, they are poised to induce a rapid and localized hemostatic plug at a vascular injury. So normal hemostasis is nothing but blood to be in a fluid state. For the normal hemostasis to be maintained, these are the three components of normal hemostasis, that is endothelial cells lining the vascular vessels, platelets and coagulation cascade. So in hemostasis we have totally three types of hemostasis. One is called as a primary and secondary and tertiary. Primary hemostasis is the first step where the process of hemostasis starts with the formation of platelet plug, and this platelet plug formation depends on normal platelet number and function, and it is the initial manifestation of clot formation. Whereas secondary hemostasis, in which there is a activation of clotting cascade and there is a deposition and stabilization of fibrin. Tertiary hemostasis is nothing but dissolution of the fibrin clot, and it is dependent on plasminogen activation. So normal hemostasis is nothing but sequence of events at the site of injury. Brief period of vasoconstriction is the first thing which happens whenever there is an injury to the blood vessels due to reflex neurogenic mechanism due to release of endothelin. So this is the picture of blood vessel which is lined by the endothelial cells, and this is the site of, this arrow is showing the site of injury. At the site of injury immediate there is a reflex vasoconstriction. Vasoconstriction is a constriction of the blood vessels. So in primary hemostasis, whenever there is an endothelial injury, it exposes highly thrombogenic subendothelial extracellular matrix, which allows the platelets which are present in the blood to adhere and become activated. That is, these platelets undergoes a shape change and release of secretory granules. Platelet aggregation to form a hemostatic plug. So this picture depicts the primary hemostatic process. So this is the site of injury. This is the injury in which the platelets get accumulated. Whenever there is injury, first step is the platelet plug formation. Platelet come and adhere to the endothelial injury site, and then there is a change in the shape of platelets from round to flat. These platelets release some granules, that is they release ADP, thromboxane A2. Then more and more recruitment of the platelets will occur at the site of injury, and finally there is formation of hemostatic plug. That is, the blood clot will be formed which will prevent the further loss of blood from the injured blood vessel or from the injured site. Secondary hemostasis is nothing but there is a synthesis of tissue factor, a procoagulant factor by endothelium, and the coagulation pathway is activated to form thrombin, which converts fibrinogen into fibrin. This is secondary hemostasis. Here you can see at the site of injury there is a formation of tissue factor, phospholipid complex expression, thrombin activation, fibrin polymerization. All this leads to activation of clotting factor, and the stable blood clot is formed. Then third one is antithrombotic counterregulation, that is the dissolution of the clot because of the release of TPA, that is tissue plasminogen activator, which cause fibrinolysis, and thrombomodulin, which further blocks the coagulation cascade. This is the trapped neutrophils and blood vessels which forms the polymerized fibrin. Ultimately, the further clot formation will be stopped by this antithrombotic counterregulation mechanism. So this is nothing but a tertiary type of hemostasis. So this is a diagrammatic representation. Whenever there is a site of injury to the blood vessel, these platelets get pooled, aggregated, then they get activated. Then there is a formation of thrombin. Platelets get activated. Platelet will release some mediators like thromboxane A2, ADP, serotonin, all those things. Then there is ultimate formation of platelet plug. This comes under primary hemostasis. Secondary hemostasis is activation of coagulation pathway. Tertiary hemostasis is dissolution of the fibrin. So whenever there is a trauma, you see first vessel vasoconstriction plus shed blood. Then there is a right side you can see platelet adhesion, activation, aggregation, stable hemostatic plug. On the left hand side simultaneously coagulation pathway gets activated, fibrin formation and formation of stable hemostatic plug. So there are some differences between primary and secondary hemostasis. Primary is mainly platelet mediated, secondary is mainly coagulation factor mediated. Primary occurs within seconds of injury, secondary takes several minutes for completion. Whereas primary is important in preventing blood loss from capillaries, small arterioles and venules. Secondary hemostasis is most important in larger vessels. Primary hemostasis forms a platelet plug. Secondary hemostasis forms a stable fibrin plug. So next comes the coagulation cascade or coagulation pathway. Coagulation pathway is nothing but it's a complex formation of phospholipid membranes, and this coagulation pathway is divided into intrinsic pathway, extrinsic pathway and the common pathway. So in this diagrams you can see on the right hand side you have an extrinsic pathway, on the left hand side you have an intrinsic pathway. These two pathways combines to form a common pathway. So these pathways, first we will talk about intrinsic pathway. Intrinsic pathway starts from one of the coagulation factor, that is totally we have 13 coagulation factors which are released from the or synthesized from the liver, and these coagulation factors helps in clotting of the blood whenever there is a injury. So intrinsic pathway starts from the factor 12 which is called as a Hegman factor. This 12 gets activated. This 12 will be in an inactive form, it gets activated to active form. Then this 12 will activates 11 to 11A, and then factor 9 gets activated, factor 8 gets activated with the help of thrombin. So these are under intrinsic pathway. Extrinsic pathway always occurs whenever it initiates whenever there is a tissue injury which release the tissue factor called as thromboplastin. This particular thromboplastin will activate the factor 7. Usually these factors are in an inactive form. There should be some stimulus for the activation of these factors. So thromboplastin will activate factor 7 to 7A. So this particular 7A from the extrinsic pathway and 8 or 9 from the intrinsic pathway will activate the factor 10, and here it leads to a common pathways. And this factor 10 in the presence of calcium gets activated, and this 10 further activates 5 to 5, factor 5 gets activated, factor 2 gets activated. 2 is nothing but prothrombin. Prothrombin gets converted to thrombin. Then this thrombin will convert fibrinogen to fibrin. Then finally this fibrin has a crossed linked fibrinopeptides. So this is how the coagulation pathway begins, and the stable clot will form by the formation of fibrin. So this is again one more diagrammatic representation showing the extrinsic pathway, how the factor 7 with the help of calcium gets activated, and how the factor 7 activates 10 which leads to a common pathway. And intrinsic factor, all the factors like 12, 11, 9 all are there which activates into a common pathway. Prothrombin converted to thrombin, fibrinogen converted to fibrin. Ultimately fibrin degradation products are formed in the coagulation pathway. And one more pathway is there called as fibrinolytic pathway. Fibrinolytic pathway is nothing but how the formed fibrin from the coagulation get dissolved. This formed fibrin gets dissolved by something called as tissue plasminogen activator. So the fibrinolytic system, the system is activated by plasminogen activator. The sources of this includes kallikrein of the kinin system, endothelial cells and the leukocytes. This plasminogen activator acts as a plasminogen present as component of plasma proteins to form plasmin. Further breakdown of fibrin by plasmin forms fibrinopeptides or fibrin split products. So this diagram will tell you how the fibrinogen is converted to fibrin split product. So plasminogen activator, it is activated by the leukocytes or endothelial cells, which converts the plasminogen to plasmin, and this plasmin further converts the fibrinogen to fibrin splits product. So this whole process is called as fibrinolytic system. So next we come to collection of blood, methods of collection of blood in a laboratory or for testing any of the things, how you collect the blood. So basically we are having three different sources from where the blood can be collected. One is called as a venous blood, second is an arterial blood, third is a capillary blood. Venous blood collection, nothing but blood is collected from the veins of the patient. It is required when large amount of blood is required. So basically we prefer the antecubital veins which are present in the arm, that is in the arm cubital veins, and radial veins are also preferred, dorsal veins are also preferred. So venous blood, most common vein from where the blood is collected is a median cubital vein, and the needle bore used is 18 to 20 gauges are commonly used, which is having 1 to 1.5 inches long. So these venous blood is mainly used for estimation of the hematological parameters like hemoglobin, ESR, PCV, cell count, and biochemical parameters like blood urea, sugar, creatinine, bacteriological and serological examination, even for blood grouping and cross matchings. So this is how we collect the blood from the median cubital vein from the arm. So when we collect the blood into the tube, so the blood gets separated into three components. One is the RBC component, second one is the center one is WBC and platelet component, third is the plasma component. And venous blood is collected whenever we need large amount of blood. So the procedure comes like this. So first, when a patient comes for the collection, ask the patient to lie down, then apply a tourniquet approximately 3 to 5 inches above the antecubital fossa, that is not more than 1 minute. If the skin appears blanched above and below the tourniquet, it is too tight. So you should not tie the tourniquet too tight, it should be tight little loose. If your finger can be inserted between the tourniquet and the patient's skin is too loose, then you have to tighten it. Then what you do, after tourniquet application, have the patient clench fist. Feel for the vein that bounces when pushed or tapped on. Palpate any potential vein to help determine size, direction and depth. A slight rotation of the arm may help to better expose a vein that may otherwise be hidden. So then what you do, you clean the site with the spirit. Then perform the venipuncture. Clean the selected area with spirit swab. The patient arm is gripped tightly with the help of tourniquet. The vein is penetrated by positioning the needle at 20 to 30 degree angle. Then after blood has been drawn, the patient should release the fist and the tourniquet is also released. A cotton ball is held firmly over the venipuncture site as soon as needle is removed. After removing the needle, the collected blood is dispensed in an appropriate tubes or vacutainers. So the blood in the anticoagulant tubes are mixed carefully. The tubes are covered with appropriate stoppers. The needle should be disposed by using needle destroyer. Used cotton syringes into a non-penetrable container. So this is how the procedure, how you draw the blood gets over. So basically this was about the venous blood collection. The next is arterial blood. Arterial blood collection is required mainly in certain studies, especially when we want to estimate the blood gases, that is pH of the blood, CO2, O2, and collect quickly, fill completely and seal both the ends immediately. No air bubble should be there. Put in ice water and deliver stat to the lab. So arteries which are used mainly are radial and brachial arteries and temporal arteries. And femoral artery can also be used for the collection of blood from the artery. Then third one is a capillary blood. Capillary blood collection is also called as skin prick method. The sites which are commonly used for this capillary methods are fingers, earlobes or edge of a heel in infants. So this capillary tube is used mainly for again hematological parameters, that is HB, counts like RBC, WBC, platelet, peripheral smear examination and for blood grouping. So these are the sites. This is the heel pump which we use, can collect the capillary blood in a child. Finger pulp can be used or earlobe can be used. Then it comes the anticoagulant. Anticoagulant is nothing but a reagent which will not allow the blood to clot. That means it blocks the clotting pathway, anticoagulant. So we have two types of anticoagulant. One is called as a calcium chelators, other one is a heparin. So calcium chelators are nothing but oxalates. In oxalates again we have potassium oxalate, ammonium oxalate, balanced oxalate or double oxalate, also called as Winthrop's mixture. Then we have EDTA, that is ethylene diamine tetraesteric acid. Then we have citrates. In oxalate, calcium combines with the oxalates to form insoluble calcium oxalate. So the insoluble calcium oxalates will block the calcium cascade, that is calcium is not there, the common pathway of coagulation pathway will not take place and the blood will not clot. So concentration of these oxalates is potassium oxalate is 2 mg per ml of blood, ammonium oxalate is 2 mg per ml of blood, double oxalate is 3:2 ratio, and oxalates can be used for oxalate anticoagulants are used for estimation of the hematological parameters like HB, PCV, WBC, RBC, PT, ESR, etc. So disadvantage of oxalates are they do not preserve the morphology of cells, so not used in blood smear preparation. Cannot be used in blood transfusion as it's toxic and the calcium oxalate precipitates may cause harm. Then EDTA. EDTA is the most common anticoagulant used in hematological parameters. Action: it is the most powerful calcium chelator and forms a soluble complex. In EDTA we have sodium EDTA and potassium EDTA. The concentration of EDTA is 1 to 2 mg per ml of blood. Uses is it preserves the morphology of cells, so can be used in making the blood smear. So if a blood sample is collected in EDTA, we can easily see the morphology of the cells, that is RBCs, WBCs and the platelets. So it is also used in estimation of HB, PCV, WBC, RBC, PET, ESR, reticulocyte count, and also be used in flow cytometric studies. Then next anticoagulant is citrates. In citrates we have three types: trisodium citrate, acid citrate dextrose, citrate phosphate dextrose. And the main action of these citrates, they bind to the calcium in a non-ionized though still soluble complex. Uses: trisodium citrate is used in Westergreen's methods of ESR estimation and the coagulation studies, that is most commonly for PTA and APTT studies. ACD, that is acid citrate dextrose, is used for preserving blood for blood transfusion. The concentration of the citrate is 1:4 ratio. Disadvantage is it dilutes the blood as it is in a liquid form. Heparin. Heparin is nothing but it's a natural biological anticoagulant, acidic in nature. Its action is mainly it potentiates the action of antithrombin 3, thus inhibits the action of thrombin on fibrinogen and also the formation of thromboplastin. So there is no formation of fibrinogen, so ultimately no formation of clot. It is mainly used in the estimation of ABG, that is arterial blood gas analysis, estimation of zinc, ammonia and potassium, and in some osmotic fragility test and Ham's test. Disadvantage of heparin is it's expensive, not satisfactory for smears, hence highly acidic reaction tends to cause a blue discoloration to the background. It may affect the platelets and leukocytes, causing them to clump. So morphology is also not properly identified if you use the heparin anticoagulant. So basically by now we know how to collect the blood, the procedure, and then what different anticoagulants we used for the blood for not to clot. That is, blood, the meaning of exact blood is blood, it has a liquid portion and a solid portion. Liquid portion is nothing but a plasma, and solid portion is the suspended formed elements, that is cellular ones, RBCs, WBCs and platelets. The liquid portion, plasma, is nothing but it is a fluid obtained by centrifuging the anticoagulated blood, so that the lower portion is all the cellular or solid component, the upper portion is the plasma. Serum. Serum is nothing but fluid got when the blood is allowed to clot. That is, serum is plasma minus fibrinogen or clotting factor. When we remove the clotting factors from the plasma, the fluid what we obtain is called as serum. So to get the serum, we have to draw the blood in a plain tube without anticoagulants. So all the coagulant factors can get utilized. So what finally remains is a serum without clotting factors. Then comes to the vacutainers. We have different kinds of vacutainers in which the blood gets collected. The most commonly used vacutainer is one with the red colored top. That is, additive is none. That means it is not having any anticoagulant. It is a plain tube, and the mode of action is blood clots, and the serum is separated by centrifugation. This serum we can use for lot of biochemical studies, immunological and serological studies, and even in blood bank. The next vacutainer is one with the gold top. Again, it is a plain tube without anticoagulant. It is also called as serum separator tube, which contains a gel at the bottom to separate the blood from the serum on centrifugation. So there is no mixing of blood and the serum. So there will be a gel in between. So we can easily separate the serum and take the serum for the studies like biochemical, immunological and the serological studies. Then we have a light green top, which is again a plasma separating tube with a lithium heparin. This is having a heparin as anticoagulant, and it is again used in a lot of biochemical studies. So purple color top, this is most commonly used. The red one is most commonly used, which is a plain one, and the gold top, that is a serum separator, and the purple one EDTA, in which the mode of action is it forms the calcium salts to remove the calcium. When calcium is removed, no coagulation, blood will not clot. And this EDTA anticoagulant tube is used in, already discussed, EDTA is used for all the hematological test and blood banking test. Then light blue top is a sodium citrate anticoagulated tube, which again forms the calcium salts to remove the calcium. This light blue top vacutainer is mainly used in coagulation tests for the estimation of prothrombin time and thrombin time. Light grey top, that is having a sodium fluoride or potassium oxalate, which is used in a estimation of glucose. So order of draw of the blood. Once you draw the blood, venous blood, once you draw into the syringe, we have one order from in which vacutainer we have to put the blood. So first one you have to put, if you need a blood culture studies, so first you have to dispose the blood in the blood culture tube, that is yellow black stopper, then the plain tube red stopper or SST serum separator gold top. Then third one is a coagulation tube, which is having a light blue stopper, and last draw the additive tube in this order: heparin if you need some test where heparin anticoagulant is required, then the EDTA, then last is the oxalate or fluoride light grey stoppers. Tubes with anticoagulants or additives must be mixed thoroughly with the collected blood. So samples collected for coagulation studies. So now we know for coagulation studies we are collecting the blood in sodium citrate tube, that is a vacutainer having a light blue colored stopper, and this anticoagulant maintains the stability of coagulation factor. It prevents the clot formation in sample prior to testing, prevents factor activation in tube even if clot does not form, and these additives in tube must not interfere with the individual coagulation factors. So samples are drawn into these tubes As I told, 18 or 19 to 21 goes toward hemolysis in adults and 21 to 23 for pediatric samples. These are non-vegetable, siliconoid surface or plastic tubes so as not to activate the factor. Contain buffer sodium citrate in a ratio of 1:2, 1 part of anticoagulant and 9 part of a blood. Sample is mixed by inversion of tubes 2 to 3 times. Okay, so here we finish the topics which are covered, which are supposed to be are hemostasis, regarding the anticoagulants, regarding the coagulation pathway, vacutainers and methods of collection of blood. And next I am giving you the internal questions, hematology internals. The next week is your hematology internal, and I am giving you a attached copy of important questions in a word format separately for BSc MLT second year and DMLT second year students. Thank you.